You are watching an episode in our Landlording A to Z series, where we walk you through the steps, skills, and challenges involved with residential rental real estate investing. We share our expert advice, including the tips, tricks, and strategies we've learned over years of managing rental property. Please subscribe to our channel to get notified each time a new episode comes out, and please like and share our content with people you know who might be interested. Thanks for watching.
Hello there, everyone. We are Landlord Gurus, and we are moving on with our Landlording A to Z series. We've been talking previously about issues that come up as you are managing your properties, starting from purchasing to finding tenants, getting leases, etc. We've talked about move-in process, and today we are going to be talking about the move-out process. So what happens when a tenant is preparing to move out. So we'll talk about lease expiration. We'll talk about when you can show the unit, some of the move-out logistics, inspections. We're going to talk about the difference between wear and tear and damages, getting the deposit back to the tenants, and then what happens if the tenant abandons some property there and leaves some stuff behind. Some of the best practices, rules and regulations, things like that. So we'll get started here in a minute once we remind everyone to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube things here so that you get notified when new episodes come out. We've been releasing new episodes about once a week, so stay on top of that if you want to get the next ones as well. So yeah, welcome everyone, and we'll get started.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Chris. So both Chris and I keep a spreadsheet that has all the dates for when leases, and Chris did a cool spreadsheet where it's color coded for how many days out the lease expiration date is. So everybody can keep track of when it's time to offer an extension, that type of thing. You want to look ahead, see when leases are expiring, and then reach out to your tenants if they haven't already done it with you about whether or not they want to renew the lease, whether you want to renew it, or whether or not they'll be vacating the property. So there are local laws that'll determine, when you're maybe required to offer them a new lease. For here, for example, in Seattle, between 60 and 90 days, you need to reach out, remind them that their lease is ending, and offer a renewal. So you want to know what your requirements are there. You also want to know what the requirements of the tenants are in terms of when they should give you notice. In most places it's 30 days. Here it's 20 days. So they generally have till the 10th to give you notice. And then in the case of eviction, you follow the local legal requirements for providing notice and getting court orders to get people to vacate the property. And we just did an episode on evictions, actually. So, you can look back in I guess that was last episode, wasn't it?
Last episode, yeah, I think it was
15, yeah. So
we'll put a link down at the bottom of the video as well.
Yep.
And also one thing about that spreadsheet is we're required to give a certain amount of notice in advance for rent raises and rent increases, things like that. So
right.
It's another thing to keep track of as well. And here it's 6 months, 180 days in advance. So
Yep. There's a lot to keep track of, it feels like. So
exactly. Yeah, so depending on when you receive the notice relative to the move out date, so you're going to want to come up with a plan to show the unit. And that may be even while the current tenant is still living there, right? If you're getting notice 20 days in advance, or if even 60 to 90 days in advance when you offer them that offer to renew and they decline. So you're going to know in advance that the tenants are not going to renew and you're going to have an expiration or a vacancy. So come up with a plan to try and show that unit. Again, one of the goals of this whole process is to minimize that downtime so that you are ideally collecting rent the entire year and you don't have a month or 2 months where you're not. So come up with a plan to show the unit while the tenants are still living there if possible. Oftentimes renters are shopping for their next home around the 10th of the month. That sort of seems to be a general time frame. It could be anytime, obviously, but we find that we get more inquiries at certain times of the month. So if you're able to show it then, you might be able to just fill the space sort of as soon as that outgoing tenant vacates it, and that would be great. But come up with a plan, work with the current tenant to figure out when good times are where they might not be there so that you can show it, and hopefully they can kind of keep it clean. You may even want to incentivize them to keep it in a certain condition if that helps you out. So
true.
There's certain things you can do.
Right.
About that, yeah.
And while this is all going on, you want to put together a plan for the move out, and it involves coordinating with the outgoing tenant. So start out with a message to your tenant that details in writing, this is usually an email, the steps and expectations for moving out, including cleaning, repairs. I like to reach out as I see that vacancy coming to ask them whether or not there's anything that deserves attention that needs to be repaired, because that gives me an opportunity to do it between tenants generally, and also so that I'm not surprised by a problem when I'm showing the apartment.
And sometimes it can take days or even weeks to schedule a handyman to come out. So you can line that up in advance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you want to set expectations for how the security deposit is going to be refunded and including expectations for how clean things are. Like I use move in ready, and I often talk to them about whether or not what their timeline is looking like, what day of the month they're actually moving, discuss with them whether or not they want to clean and whether or not they're going to be able to do a deep clean to get move in ready, which means, cupboards all cleaned out, the refrigerator all cleaned out, those the things that are often missed. And I kind of communicate with that with them. And often I propose bringing in my cleaner and then deducting that cost from their security deposit so that I know that the place is going to get really clean. And I present it to them as a benefit because they can move and not worry about that. I've done it plenty of times. It's impossible to move and clean an entire place on one day.
Exactly.
People still try, and I try to let them know that it's not very realistic, and I don't want to have them clean and then also take money out of their deposit. So
Exactly. True.
So address what they should do with the keys and the garage door openers, fobs, and all that kind of thing. Remind them to close out and pay all the utility bills in full so that when they move out, things are really buttoned up and ready to pass on.
Yeah, when they move into their new place, they probably don't want to be dealing with the ongoing things from their previous place. So yeah, utilities, mail, all that kind of stuff. Just little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So then when they move out, and you're going to want to do an inspection after they move out. And so remember when you moved in, you created that move-in inspection checklist. And in some places you would have been required to do that if you collect a security deposit, depending on your state laws. And so you may have to do that exact same thing again when they move out to complete that checklist.
And that's an inventory. Just to interject, that's basically an inventory room by room, and sometimes common areas or outside areas. That's an inventory of the condition of all of the surfaces and all of the appliances and all that type of thing of the entire property. So you have that, definitely best practices to have that documented. And then what Chris is talking about is taking that same document and documenting the new condition.
Exactly. So yeah, you've done it before with the checklist, and it's got, like the one we've got here has the move-in condition, and then it's got another column for the move-out condition. So you take that same document, you've got your photos that you took and videos, hopefully from when you moved in, so that you can compare them, and then you make note. And you're going to need that when it comes time to refund their deposit. If you're taking anything out of it, right, you're going to have to give them an itemized inventory of what exactly those expenses were. So having the checklist, and you can show them, look, it was this way when you moved in, now it's this way. You've got damages in this area or this thing. And again, take photos, take video so that you can document all of that. And it just keeps it clean. There's no questions, no contesting what it looked like before versus what it looks like now. You've got it all. So
shared documentation.
Exactly. So yeah, check out that move-in video that we did a few weeks ago, and that'll kind of explain a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'd done it when we did that video, but since then I've moved somebody in and I've used the move-in condition checklist through Turbo Tenant, which you customize it to fit the property, but they do it all electronically. They can do it on the app. They can attach photos. I like it because I can require it through Turbo Tenant, and then it's there. I don't have to go looking in my file cabinet and wonder whether or not they've got their copy of it and then figure out getting it all together. So anyway, another benefit. The Turbo Tenant is one of our affiliate partners, as are a number of the property management software companies out there. And that's the one I'm using at this point, and I'm really liking it.
Yeah.
So a bit of a plug, but it's a new feature that I've just started using. Okay, so we're going to talk about wear and tear versus damages. I try to set these expectations to some extent up front as well when I'm talking to tenants about the move-in checklist. I try to communicate that, scuffs on the wall and picture holes and nail holes and picture hangers are wear and tear. Whereas if there's either a lot of damage or a lot of scuffs, even if it's minor, or larger holes, that type of thing, that's damage and will need to be repaired. So understanding the difference between wear and tear and damages is crucial for both landlords and tenants. And generally, wear and tear refers to a kind of a natural or gradual deterioration of a surfaces or a property that occurs over time. And I think of it as like that either naturally happening, faded paint or wallpaper, impact from sunlight. People run into a wall and there's a little scuff, or a couch rubs against something and there's a little scuff, kind of daily normal activities. A door handle might loosen up or electrical switch might, need to be realigned, that type of thing.
Just the stuff that happens from just general everyday use. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary.
Right, right. Like if you lived in it, would this happen?
Right.
Is kind of the way I try to think about it. And then I try not to think about my 16-year-old son, but too much. But no, he's good. And then there are damages, and that's the result of kind of negligent or abusive or careless conduct. These things can be deducted. The cost of repair damages can be deducted from security deposits. They can be a large hole in the wall or excessive marks, or instead of the little picture nail holes, that, like I said, that the big plastic anchors for hanging heavy stuff. That stuff needs to be fixed because it's an eyesore, and it's significant. If there are broken windows or torn screens, of course, that needs to be fixed. Or, stains from, I don't know, wine, or hopefully you don't have cigarette burns, that type of thing. But, that would qualify. Or, damaged appliance. Even in some cases, there's damage that's associated with inadequate cleaning during the time. So stovetops can sometimes qualify here. Fortunately, the drip pans are pretty easy to replace, but if things don't get cleaned and stay dirty for a long time, it can create permanent damage, unfortunately. So
exactly. And, hopefully we'll have documented sort of the date that certain appliances were put in use. So that this stove is only 2 years old or something like that. It shouldn't have worn to this condition that it's at, just based on normal wear and tear over the course of a couple of years. But
exactly,
that kind of thing. Yeah. So when doing this and when going through the move out, and it's going to come into play when you're returning deposits, there are legal implications to consider. So, Eli just talked about wear and tear versus damages. So landlords can't charge your tenants for normal wear and tear, but you can deduct from the security deposit damages and things that go beyond normal use. Like Eli had said before, setting that expectation. So if it's in the lease agreement, if you can define what constitutes wear and tear and what constitutes damages in the lease agreement as much as possible. Obviously, you don't want to have your lease talking about every single thing in there, but if you can kind of define what wear and tear versus damages is in the lease, then everybody knows. And again, we'll go back to documentation. Property management software does a great job with this, but document the condition of the property at move in and at move out, again, with your move in checklist, so that you can compare and assess the charges, and then refer to your state and local laws, because they might provide specific definitions and guidelines on how you handle wear and tear versus handling damages when it comes to refunding those deposits.
Yep, we're not lawyers, and laws are increasingly different from state to state and city to city. So unfortunately, we have to kind of harp on that. It's important to keep up with local laws. It's worth it to consult with lawyers when there's doubt, just to make sure you're not getting yourself in trouble. So. Yeah. Okay, so now you've got your tenant who's moved out, you've done your move out inspection and have documented the condition and noted any work that needs to be done, the difference between the normal wear and tear and damages. So now you're at the point where it's time to return the security deposits. And what we're referring to here is a refundable security deposit. Some landlords do cleaning fees and other things, but what we're talking about here is like what's going to be taken out of the security deposit and what's going to be returned. So understand your state specific regulations about returning the deposits, what you're allowed to deduct, what the timeline is that you have before you need to send the refund back. Here it's 21 days, I believe. In most places it's somewhere between two and 4 weeks. Make sure you get a forwarding address from the tenant. They'll have an incentive to give this to you so that you can send them their deposit. But I try to remember to get that as early as possible, ideally when they give me notice, so there's don't delay down the road. And provide the tenant with an itemized statement of any deductions that you are removing from that security deposit. And generally, there are some rules about if you hire out an outside company, you need to provide the receipt for that work from that company. Or if you do the work, then there are rules about how much you can charge for your time. And you need to explain that very clearly and document that very clearly when you send the refund. So get professional estimates where necessary, where you can't do the work. Be sure your all the communication and documentation with the tenant is clear and concise, and just keep everybody on the same page. And after the tenant is moved out, move quickly to get it ready to be its best self and show well if you're still showing it, or hand it right over to the next tenant. Ideally, if you've got somebody lined up, don't lose time on letting a property sit.
Exactly. Once if you might miss the best period for when people are looking for their next place, and if you miss that, you may have to wait another month before you get some of that same traffic back, and then Yeah, so just be ready. And then we've got tenants giving notice they moved out, but there are a lot of times, and this just comes up every now and then, but sometimes they just leave their belongings behind for whatever reason. Sometimes they just don't have time to finish moving things out. In some cases, they've been evicted, or for whatever the case may be, and they leave some of their belongings behind. You might think, oh, okay, well, they're gone. I can just throw everything out and start fresh. But there are some things that you need to consider and things that you need to know. So we'll go through some of what that entails right now. So you're going to want to conduct an inspection of the property and document all the items that are left behind. You're going to do that anyways to kind of assess the condition of the unit and see what damages you can collect or take out of their security deposit anyways. But if you get there and they've left stuff behind, just take note of all that stuff. Determine the reason for the tenant's departure, as it can kind of affect how you handle the abandoned property. Again, check with your local rules, but different scenarios such as lease termination or eviction or even disappearance have specific guidelines of what you can and cannot do. If the tenant is left after providing notice or at the end of the lease, you may have a little more flexibility in handling the belongings, but if they've been evicted, there's definitely specific protocols which you have to follow, and that may potentially involve local law enforcement as well. Send a legal notice to the former tenant if they've left a forwarding address. Inform them of their abandoned property and your intention to dispose of it after a certain period of unclaimed, if you're allowed to do so. So just as an aside, this happened to me a couple of years ago where they left their car behind. That's right. No longer working, and it was just there in the parking space. So there were certain things that I had to do. I couldn't just take it and sell it, but I had to document it, gave him ample opportunity to come get it. He never got it. I had to work with a towing company, fill out forms that legally owned and managed the property, and then towing company, then they were able to come out, tow it away, send notice to the former tenant, and basically they're able to use that car as kind of, either he comes and collects it and pays for it, or if he never does, then it's theirs and they can do with it what they want.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I'm going through this right now actually, where it's quite a bit of stuff, but it's incidental, and the tenant has basically said, I couldn't get it all done, and I couldn't get everything in. I couldn't, his moving pod was leaving, and I think there wasn't space, or he couldn't get it done. So
that's understandable. That happens,
Yeah. So I mean, and at least that way he's told me, and I know I don't need to store it, but generally you're required to store somebody's belongings for a specific amount of time. So make sure that you do that. Make sure you don't give away, throw away, or sell belongings that you're legally required to keep. So you find yourself in that situation, research, and this is a good time to talk about local rental housing associations. Often those are, shy of going to a lawyer to figure out the rules or poring over the code books. That's a good source of information.
Yeah.
And also look into whether or not you can charge the tenant for that storage. Generally you can. In practice, it can be difficult to get reimbursed, but know what the laws are in your area. Is it okay? Look into whether or not it's okay for you to hold on to the deposit during that period of time while this is all getting worked out as well. This is where you want to know what the rules are and look into them where you are. And if the tenant doesn't come to claim their belongings within the specified period of time, and these rules are out there everywhere, so once you know that you're on the right side of those rules and you've let that amount of time go by, then you can dispose of them. You may want to just dump them. You may want to put them on the curb and say free, or you may want to sell them depending on what the value is and your situation is. And then you want to look into, if you are selling them, whether or not you can keep some of that to cover your costs, or whether or not all that money needs to go to the tenant. You need to research that as well. So, yeah. Keep detailed records of all communication between you and the tenant, any notices you've sent, and what you've done with the abandoned property. Document all this, like we keep saying, so that you're protected in case any dispute comes up. Exactly. And it's just important to handle people's belongings legally and ethically and with respect. Like Chris said, things happen, and you need to know the rules, and you also need to conduct yourself in a way that's compassionate with whatever the situation is. So.
Exactly. Yep. So, just to wrap up this move out process, again, we're talking about it now, so you can have a plan when you're ready, so that you are ready when a tenant does inform you that they're moving out. You don't want to just get blindsided with that notice, and then, what do I do now? And you miss the opportunity to get contractors in, and get handyman in, or to get it listed again, and you miss out that opportunity to get it re-rented as soon as possible. This is just to provide you with the ability to keep collecting rent, to not have it vacant for too long. So you do all that, you get, and basically you start the process all over again, right? We're going back to what we did way back in episode, 2 or 3 or whatever, when we're getting the property ready for rent and getting it listed and all over that, all that again. So you're going to continue from there, but I guess stay tuned. We're going to keep going with the landlording A to Z, and we're going to be talking about other kind of just issues that come up as you are managing your rental properties. Next, we're going to start getting into some more legal issues or regulations when talking about service animals and emotional support animals. And then
That's our next episode.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
stay tuned, like and subscribe. We'll put all the
Yep.
links to the relevant information down here and check it out.
Yeah. Yep. Share. Send it to other people too, please. Thanks for watching.
All right.